So at some point in your life, you had a dream. At some point in your life, you had this idea in your head of what you wanted to accomplish in your life. At some point, you actually had a dream. Maybe you dreamed of being a world-class chef. Maybe you dreamed of being a professional baseball player. Maybe you were going to be an engineer. Maybe you were going to be a professional dancer. You thought you were going to be the best second-grade teacher that ever lived. Or maybe you wanted to be a fantastic father, or you wanted to be the captain of a cruise ship on Royal Caribbean, or you said, you know what, I'm going to be a wonderful mom and have 4 beautiful kids. And all of us have had dreams, and yet somewhere along the way, with your dream potentially, this dream of doing something remarkable, it just vanished. And you'd say, my dream is so far gone, I can't even remember ever having a dream. I'm not sure I ever even had a dream. And yet I would tell you, I bet you probably did have a dream. Everybody has a dream. Even kids that you and I sponsor around the world, about 4,500 kids that we sponsor in communities around the world that without our sponsorship would struggle with education or food or water, even those kids have dreams. I know, because I've talked to those kids. I've talked to kids in Kalawa, and I've talked to kids in Sivakazi, India, and Kalawa, Kenya, and I've talked to kids in Haiti, kids that you and I sponsor around the world, and they have a dream. And it's amazing to listen to them talk. I mean, they talk about their dreams, and they'll say, I want to be a pilot someday. I want to be a doctor someday. I want to be a nurse. I want to be a teacher someday. And the incredible thing about it is they've never been to a doctor. They've probably never been to a nurse. If they're fortunate, they've met a teacher. They've never been on an airplane. They've seen the speck up in the sky. And yet each of them have dreams. We all have dreams, and maybe your dream's been derailed somewhere along the way, but at one time it was there, and you wanted to do something remarkable with your life. One day Jesus was talking, and as he was walking the earth 2,000 years ago, he said, I just want to tell you why I'm even here, why I came to earth. And this is what Jesus said. He said, my purpose is to give them a rich and satisfying life. Jesus said, my purpose, the reason I'm here is to give them being you and I, followers of his, the followers of Jesus, my purpose is to give my followers a rich and satisfying life. Another way to define this would be, my purpose is to give them a remarkable life. Now notice he doesn't mean, as he says this, he's not saying rich financially, you're going to be wealthy. He's not talking about that. But he does talk about a satisfying life, rich in satisfaction, rich in just the things that we accomplish that matter in life. Jesus actually said at another point that we're going to go through hard times in life, but in the midst of those hard times, we can still experience incredible joy. So rich and satisfying might mean that you are remarkable in the standpoint that you're going through such difficult times that you can still experience joy. But Jesus is my whole purpose. He came for eternity to answer our question about what happens when we die, but he also came for life today. He said, my reason for coming life today is so that you can experience a remarkable life. Now, another time, as Jesus was talking, he began to give some clues of what it takes to experience this remarkable life. And so in this case, he said, if you're faithful in the little things, you'll be faithful in the large ones. But if you're dishonest in the little things, you won't be honest in greater things. And focusing on his first line, Jesus said, if you're faithful in the little things, you will be faithful in the large ones. If you do the work in the little things, then you will experience this remarkable life that I'm talking about. And bottom line, he's saying, look, if you want to experience a remarkable life, you've got to do the little things. Otherwise, you'll never get to the larger things. And what he's really saying is the truth that all of us have experienced, and that's the fact that you and I do not drift into a remarkable life. That just doesn't happen. We've got to work at it. It takes energy, it takes effort, it takes work. And so that's why we're in this series of studies that we've entitled Do the Work. And here's my challenge to each and every one of us. Stop drifting. Stop drifting through life and hoping everything is going to work out, hoping somehow you're going to experience a rich and satisfying life, hoping that somehow by drifting, you're going to experience what Jesus said he came to provide in this life, a remarkable life. You've got to do the work. On December 17th, 1903, 2 brothers actually made history when Orville Wright flew their airplane 120 feet, staying up in the air for about 12 seconds. Later that day, Wilbur, his brother, piloted the aircraft 852 feet, or about the length of 3 football fields. And the Wright brothers are celebrated as being the first human beings to ever achieve controlled flight. As soon as the news spread of their accomplishment to the rest of the world thought they were this instant success. They had this major breakthrough, and what the rest of the world didn't see was the agonizingly slow business of getting that plane off the ground. It was years of tinkering and years of failure and years of experimenting and adjusting and trying again. Their work was so tedious that their neighbors who lived not far from them had no idea what was going on outside of town. As a matter of fact, if you had taken a stroll out to the countryside and you wanted to see this big breakthrough, what you probably would have witnessed were two men just kind of tinkering with airplane parts for weeks and weeks on end. There was not a whole lot to see. Their moments of being up in the air were rare, and once they achieved flight, then all of a sudden the crowds began to come, and everybody just said, man, instant success, this big breakthrough that they're experiencing. But years later, Orville and Wilbur's own nephew actually said this: history was happening in those moments, there in their shop, in their home, but I didn't realize it at the time because it all seemed so commonplace. And you look and you go, the biggest invention that really impacted 100 years of human history more than any other during that period of time, and it's described as being commonplace. No big deal. Didn't even really notice what was going on. Just commonplace. To which Jeff Manion, in his book Dream Big, Think Small, actually points out a reality of kind of just human nature. He says it's human nature to celebrate the astounding breakthrough rather than the repetitive, tedious work that leads to the breakthrough. Everybody noticed when they got the plane off the ground, they didn't notice the work that was going on behind the scenes in the barn. And that's just kind of the way we do things. We notice the breakthroughs, we notice the 2 or 3 or 4 big events in somebody's life, but we tend to just kind of ignore all the tedious work that leads to that breakthrough. Not unlike what quarterback Super Bowl MVP Nick Foles actually said when he was talking about what he reads on social media. And he says, all we talk about on social media are our breakthroughs. We tend to neglect just all the tedious work that goes on behind the scenes. And yes, I just did give a positive comment about Nick Foles. Don't even clap for that. I can like the player. I don't have to like the team. Let's just put it that way. And I definitely don't have to like that obnoxious so-called fight song that is repeated again and again and again. This week, as you and I watch Olympic athletes win bronze, silver, gold medals, what we're watching is their breakthrough. What we're actually seeing and what we're celebrating is their success. What seems like sudden success. You didn't know their name before. Now all of a sudden you know them. But what we don't see are the hours and hours and the days and days and months and years that they have spent working, preparing for that one remarkable moment. If you were watching the skating event, now for the last number of years, one of my favorite sports, and Scott Hamilton, as he talked about the skaters, he said they show up 5 o'clock every morning, even on the days of competition. And like the Wright brothers, every one of these athletes, they had a dream. Maybe it was a dream to fly, maybe it was to be an Olympic champion, to conquer a mountain, to be the best. And it's their faithfulness over an extended period of time that allowed them to become what we would call a sudden success. But Jesus said it best again. Jesus said, if you're faithful in the little things, you'll be faithful in the large ones. But it all starts behind the scenes, doing the work again and again. Now, most of us aren't trying to figure out how to unlock the mysteries of flight. Most of us are not trying to win a gold medal at the Olympics. Instead, we lead families, we lead companies, we lead schools. We're nurses, we're coaches, we're sales reps, we're truck drivers, we're managers. Some of us are just trying to get by. I mean, you may be a student and say, my goal is just to get through this semester. That's all I'm hoping for. You're a parent and you're saying, all I'm trying to do is get through the terrible twos, or I'm just trying to live through the teenage years. Or your husbands and wives saying, if we can just hang on one more year. And we're individuals, we're families, just hoping that last week's paycheck will stretch long enough to get to next week's paycheck. And the farthest thing from your mind is this remarkable life, this rich and satisfying life that Jesus is talking about. You say, I'm just trying to get through the day. And you're saying, come on, David, if you knew my life, If you knew the circumstances, if you knew my family, if you knew what I'd been through, if you knew what was done to me, if you knew who I was married to, if you knew who my parents were, if you knew the kind of job that I had, if you knew what I had done in the past, you too would forget all about experiencing a remarkable life. But here's what I know. Jesus said, you know what? That's his purpose for coming, to give us a rich and satisfying, remarkable life. Jesus said success in the large things requires this deep, abiding commitment to the small things. It's just doing the work behind the scenes. And he didn't qualify who can experience that other than those that are his followers. And I like what Craig Rochelle, actually the way he said it was this: you're likely to overestimate what you can do in the short run, but underestimate what you can do in a lifetime of faithfulness. And we can start today. It's the little things done again and again, consistently over time. A strong marriage. Strong marriage is built on the routine of quickly apologizing and saying, I'm sorry, even at the most minor of offenses. A hotel becomes an exceptional hotel when every interaction with an employee ends with, my pleasure. What else can I do to serve you? A lower middle-class family experiences financial peace, something all of us would love to experience. But they experience it because they save a bit of money every week with every paycheck, week after week, month after month, year after year. And you look at those things and you go, how could those things lead to anything remarkable? They're so small. How could saying I'm sorry with little offenses matter? How could offering to serve customers a little bit more matter? How could being disciplined enough to put aside a bit of money every paycheck really make that much difference? But over time, doing the work with these small things accumulates, and it leads to this remarkable marriage or a great company or great lives. And see, here's what we need to understand. Doing the work matters. Your work matters. Your life matters. And you can build a remarkable life one day at a time. And it's not going to come with quick fixes. It's not going to be handed to you on a silver platter. Definitely not going to drift into it. It comes one day at a time. Big dreams have to be anchored in these small, life-giving habits that are just repeated again and again and again. You know the tale of the tortoise and the hare. It stretches all the way back to ancient Greece. It appears in Aesop's fables. The course is set, the race begins. The hare dashes out of sight, but then quickly stops, reclines to take a nap. The tortoise quietly is just plodding along, passes the sleeping hare, crosses the finish line first. And the moral of the story, we've heard it before. We've heard it again and again. Slow and steady wins the race. That's really what Jesus is saying. Take care of the small things, then you will experience things better in the large things. And it's not so much the slow that we need to focus on, it's the steady, slow and steady together that makes the difference. It's this plodding along, being faithful, things that aren't going to grab the news. Nobody's going to talk about, oh, look at how they're plodding along faithfully. Nobody will notice that. We tend to applaud the finish line, the breakthrough, the successes, the medals, the championships. What we don't tend to applaud is all the work that goes on behind the scenes, but doing the work counts. It counts in marriages, it counts in families, it counts in churches and schools and companies and communities. That's why Jeff Mannion, he says this: slow, plodding path matters because true lasting impact requires steady, consistent movement in the right direction over a considerable length of time. I think this last statement kind of wraps it up, and he says this is what it requires: consistent movement again and again and again in the right direction. It's got to be the right direction. It's not doing this consistent thing in the wrong direction, but consistently doing the right thing in the right direction over a considerable length of time. The Apostle Paul was one of the leaders of the church 2,000 years ago. The Apostle Paul was a guy that hated the followers of Jesus. He hated Christians. He hated Jesus, so much so that he dedicated his whole life to destroying any followers of Jesus he could find. That is until he had an experience himself, an encounter with Jesus. It had totally changed his life. It turned it upside down. And Paul's a guy you could relate to if you'd say, I don't know that I'd like Jesus. I don't know that I like followers of Jesus. That was Paul, until he experienced Jesus himself and his life turned around. And Paul was talking about just faithfulness and the importance of being faithful. And he said this: now, a person who's put in charge as a manager must be faithful. If you're going to have responsibility for larger things, then you're going to have to be faithful. You're going to have to show that you can be faithful, consistent over a long period of time. Notice what he doesn't say. He doesn't say you're going to have to be brilliant. He doesn't say you're going to have to be popular. He doesn't say you're going to have to be insanely creative. He just says you've got to be faithful, consistently doing the work over a long period of time. And which that says to me, it's accessible. It's accessible for all of us. You don't have to be an Olympic athlete. You don't have to be a Rhodes Scholar. You don't have to be a millionaire to live a remarkable life. It's available to everyone, but what it requires is faithfulness, consistently doing the right thing over an extended period of time, just doing the work. Doing the work is the dedicated father that endlessly reenacts the bedtime ritual of reading to his children, oftentimes the same book, week after week after week. For my daughter Ashley, when she was young, our ritual was that she would get ready for bed, and she had to get all ready for bed. Once she was all ready for bed, she would come and find me. When she found me, I would lean over, she would jump on my back, wrap her arms around my neck, and I would carry her upstairs, take her to her bed, we'd lay down together, we would read, we would pray together, and every night I would tell her, I am so glad that you are my girl. For my son Justin, it was things like he loved baseball when he was in middle school, 4th, 5th, and 6th grade, and I knew nothing about baseball, but I coached his Little League baseball team for 3 years and showed up at the practices and showed up at the games. And he got into high school, he got into golf, and I am not a golfer, don't like the game of golf, but I played golf for 4 years. His last golf game was my last golf game, but it's just say, doing the work is the married couple who doesn't let an argument go without first making up and saying, oh man, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. And saying it doesn't matter who shoulders most of the blame. Doing the work is the band member that you see up on our stages every weekend, and you see them, and what you see is their success. What you see is the breakthrough. What you don't see is them practicing, rehearsing throughout the week. What you didn't see was them practicing scales day after day at some point in their lives so that they could get to the point where playing music became second nature to them. And doing the work as a single mom, hustling home from work, preparing dinner, spending time with her son, helping him with homework, playing games with him, putting him in bed, then sitting down to pay the bills and all the other chores that are necessary for that household, that family to stay afloat. Doing the work is sticking to the diet by not even allowing the waitress to put the bread on the table. Don't even put it on the table. And when she brings the dessert menu, it's not saying, sure, we'll just take a look at it. No. You don't even look at the menu. Doing the work is the follower of Jesus, committed to the daily routine of finding his or her chair and pulling out a Bible and reading a chapter or two of the Bible day after day after day. I recently talked to a man who said he had read the Bible through 39 times. 39 times. And I think, how in the world? You're not going to just sit down and pick up a Bible and read through it. And how could you do that? And consistently, day after day after day. And I've got to imagine his life is different. He's got to think more like God, think more like Jesus because of that experience. Doing the work as a follower of Jesus is taking the time to invite somebody to show up for something like an Easter gathering where their life might be changed for eternity, because we don't know what that small invitation will do. We don't know what that experience, if they follow Jesus, how it's going to change their life and maybe the lives of others around them. This past week, Billy Graham passed away. And Ruth and I actually on Saturday received an invitation to go to his funeral for this coming Friday, and so we're going to do that. And so it's caused me to reflect on the life of Billy Graham. And do you realize there's a tie to Billy Graham and LCBC? Don Hershey, Don and Joyce, who LCBC started in their garage, Don Hershey trusted Jesus through Billy Graham. And I step back and I look and go, okay, small thing that he trusted Jesus, big thing for him, but he trusted Jesus because of Billy Graham. And now here we all are, 17,000 of us, and how would things be different had Don not trusted Jesus through the ministry of Billy Graham? And you don't know. When you choose to invite somebody to come to Easter, they may not come this year. They may come 3 years, 4 years, 5 years from now. They may come, their life might be changed by Jesus. But what we don't know is what will happen 20, 30, 40 years from now. It's just doing the work. Over the years around LCBC, we've gone from 1 employee 27 years ago, which would be me, to now over 230 employees. And a lot's changed over 20 years, but some things haven't changed a bit. I mean, no employee is given big responsibilities until they prove themselves on the small things, till we know we can trust them on the small things, little things, repetitive things, doing it consistently again and again. And the primary thing that I look for with staff is, can I trust you with the small things? Not even necessarily potential. It's great to have potential, but potential gets you nowhere if you're not faithful with the small things. And so you've got to prove yourself first with the small things. That's why Jesus said it. He said it's the little things that matter and result in the big things. And we just finished up a marriage series. But if you want to have a remarkable marriage, it's not just going to be good enough to have attended that series. The power comes in doing the little things after the series. And I'm not saying listening to the series of studies it's not important. It might be catalytic, but it's the powerful things, the little things done again and again and again, beyond what the messages were. True change comes when you begin to do the work. It's not going to happen overnight. Let's say you decide to start reading your Bible. You read the Bible tomorrow morning. It's probably not going to change your life tomorrow. Doing things just for a day, even if they're positive, has this extremely limited effect. And it's what we do over the years, the right thing consistently, again and again and again. And can I give you a word of caution? It takes years to build this remarkable life. It takes one weekend to destroy the whole thing. It doesn't even seem right, but you kind of look and you go, okay, I can't build my life in a weekend, but I can destroy it in a weekend. That doesn't seem fair. And yet we're watching it happen all around us with athletes, with celebrities, with people in the news, right and left, as their lives are destroyed because of 1 or 2 or 3 incidences. And a sexual indiscretion on a business trip cripples a marriage, leaving the spouse devastated, children just reeling as a result of this earthquake. And it takes years to build up a reputation. It takes hours to dismantle it. A second glass of wine gives way to a third glass, and then flashing lights and the roadside breathalyzer test results in a DUI, and all of a sudden, years of building a reputation. It's destroyed in one moment. A student is expelled 6 months before graduation with charges of sexual harassment. Years of building towards this moment, destroyed in one moment. And so let me just ask you, what's one thing that you could do that if you would devote yourself to it day after day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year, what's the one thing, if you would start doing that, it could alter your life dramatically. It maybe would allow you to experience the remarkable life that Jesus is talking about. And I would just say pick one. And my guess is you know what it is. You have a sense in your mind of what you ought to be doing. And if you would just do that on a regular basis, your life would be dramatically different in the long haul. And so I would just say pick one. And as you pick one, remember, don't expect massive changes overnight. Some of our most significant growth happens 3, 4, 5, 10 years down the road. And so be patient, and you do that small thing again and again and again, and you do these thousands of unremarkable steps, but they're necessary if you're going to build this remarkable life. Because what we know is that life impact takes time. It's not going to happen overnight. It's going to take time for it to happen. It takes time to build trust. There's no way somebody's going to trust you with the big things until they've seen you be faithful with the small things. It takes time to refine a skill. You're not going to pick up a guitar and be able to play it today. You're not going to be able to, whatever it is that you're hoping to experience. You're not going to be the greatest dad, the greatest husband in the world, the greatest mom in the world the day that you get married. It's going to take work. You're going to have to refine it. It takes time to develop that skill. It takes time to build a reputation. And so you pick one thing and you go for it. And see, bottom line, you dream big, and then you do the small things. You take those thousands of unremarkable steps that nobody's going to notice, nobody's going to cheer, because we like the big things, we like the breakthroughs. But it's those unremarkable steps that lead to the major breakthroughs. And in 1911, 2 teams of explorers were battling the elements of Antarctica. They wanted to be the first human beings to get to the South Pole. One team was led by Great Britain's Robert Falcon Scott. The other team was from Norway. They were led by Roald Amundsen. And both teams were wanting to be the first one to place their flag at the South Pole. It was a 3-month trek into incredibly difficult conditions. They battled both physically, psychologically. They were competing with the elements, just brutal elements that were unforgiving to them. In his book, Good to Great, Jim Collins contrasted the strategy of both of these teams. Two teams trying to get to the same place, very different strategies. Scott's team often would choose to hammer out as many miles as they could if the weather was good. If it's good, we're going to go as far as we can. If it's bad, we're going to hunker down in our tents and wait out the brutal weather. Conversely, Admonson had a whole different approach. He set his goal of trudging no more than 20 miles a day, whatever the weather conditions were. And they both kept journals about this whole event. One particular horrendous blizzard, Scott wrote in his journal, I doubt if any party could travel in such weather. They hunkered down. They said, you can't be out in this. Admonson wrote in his journal about similar conditions, and he said, it's been an unpleasant day, storm, drift, frostbite, but we have advanced 13 miles closer to our goal. Two very different approaches. One, go for it hard, pull back. The other, let's just trod and plod and go slow and steady. And here's what happened. By covering as many miles as possible on the day that the weather was more advantageous or cooperative, Scott's team actually became exhausted, almost to the point of becoming immobile. Admonson's team, however, he used this 20 miles a day not only as a goal but as a restraint. And so once they got to 20 miles, even if it was still early in the day, he would pull them back and say, we're stopping. Even if everybody said, let's go on further, I'm feeling good, he would stop them from traveling further. Final results, Admonson reached the South Pole first. Not only did he reach the South Pole first, he returned safely to his base camp with his entire team on the exact day that he had predicted. They traveled 1,860 miles in 99 days, walking in the snow, and they accomplished their task. When Scott's team finally arrived at the South Pole, they discovered the Norwegian flag already there, planted by Admonson's team. The most tragic part of all of it, because they were so exhausted, none of them made it back to base camp. The entire team died on the return trip, which again is just evidence that slow and steady wins the race, which is what Jesus said, just do the small things. Do the small things on a regular basis, and you can live this remarkable life. And so over the next several weeks, we're just going to look at how do we go about living this remarkable life. And we're not going to actually talk about what are the things you need to do, because my guess is, again, you know what you need to do. You have this sense of what it is. And if you're not sure what it is, then on all of our campuses, we have these areas in the atrium called next steps, and they'd be more than kind of happy to guide you and say, here's some possible next steps for you. Maybe for you, your next step is to stop doing something. You're involved in things that take up your time, your energy, and for you, it's putting the phone down, not looking at those images, not turning on the computer to look at this or that. Whatever it is, you know what it is. And so you begin to do that. So what we're going to talk about over the next several days next several weeks is what kind of condition does your heart need to be in, your head need to be in order to be able to kind of go slow and steady and experience this remarkable life that Jesus is talking about. You do the work. And then let me challenge you as you do the work to trust God. To trust God to do something remarkable in your life, even when there's barriers, even when there's walls that make you think there's no way anything good is going to come of this. There's no way that I'll ever live a remarkable life. There's no way you think that your marriage can be saved. There's no way that you think you can live through this semester. There's no way that you can live if you don't find a spouse soon. There's no way that you're ever going to experience financial freedom. There's no way that you'll ever lose weight. There's no way I'll ever experience this remarkable life. And I would just say, Jesus says, that's why I came. He says, just do the work and then trust God. Trust God to do remarkable things. Dream big dreams. It's okay. But do the small things and trust God to do the remarkable. But here's the deal. You got to start somewhere. I look back at the Olympic athletes. I look back at Scott and Admonson. I look back at Nick Foles. I look back at everyone that accomplished what we would say was something significant. The Wright brothers, whoever it is. You know what they all had in common? They had to start somewhere. They had to say, okay, we're going to do this. And they started, and then they stayed with it, and they worked at it again and again and again and again. So today, you start. You pick what is that thing, and you start it. And then slow and steady wins the race again and again and again. And then you trust God. And you say, okay, God, Jesus, you said you came for me to experience this remarkable life, whatever that may be. And you follow him and you trust God to do something remarkable in your life. Maybe today you'd say, you know what, I need more than anything is just somebody to pray with, to talk to. And maybe it doesn't even have anything to do with this. You just had an incredibly difficult week. After every gathering across all of our locations, to my right, your left, people up in the front corner that would love to pray with you. And so make your way there after the gathering. They would love to pray with you. But my encouragement to you is do the work. Just do the small things and then trust God to do the remarkable in your life. Heavenly Father, sometimes we find ourselves just discouraged about what's going on in our lives. We find ourselves wondering, man, is anything ever going to turn in my life? And maybe, just maybe, we're trying to drift into something remarkable. And we know that that's not ever going to happen. We don't drift into the remarkable. We tend to drift into messes. Heavenly Father, I ask that you'd give us courage to trust you to do work in our lives. That as we do the slow and steady things, that Father, you would step in and you would do something remarkable. Heavenly Father, I ask that when we find ourselves thinking there's just no way possible for us to experience what Jesus himself said he came to provide, God, I ask that you would give us glimmers of hope. I ask that you would give us patience. I ask that you would give us courage. I ask that you would give us endurance just to start. And as we start, and as we do it again and again and again, the right thing consistently over a long length of time, at some point, Father, may we experience the rich and satisfying life that Jesus promises. Thanks, God, for loving us. Thank you for being concerned about today, not just eternity, but today. May we experience the life that you promised. I pray in Jesus' name. Amen.